the one, the only, Cordell Woodland from 105.7 The Fan is back on the Flex Zone podcast. Put your hands together, everybody, as he's joining us. Cordell, what is up, my brother?
What's up, fellas? How y'all doing, man? Appreciate y'all having me.
Appreciate you, my brother. Appreciate you being here.
Bomb
I
drop.
know, yes, hey, only the big bomb for you, my brother,
Right.
man. How you feeling? First of all, a lot has happened in your life since we last talked to you. Great things. If you want to, give a little peek behind the curtain and let the people know how to keep up with you, man. As always.
Yeah, man. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Cordell Woodland. Definitely blessed for sure. Every day I wake up, it's a blessing, and God's just continue to, allow me to live out my dreams and working in the sports industry, covering these great teams that I'm able to cover, and He's blessing me, even outside of my professional life. Got my son, got a 1-year old, got my fiance. We're engaged to get married next year in April. So definitely a lot of positive things happening.
Big shout out to the Woodland family. Just wanted to show you guys some love. Yes, appreciate you taking some time. I know you got a busy schedule, so we appreciate you giving some time. We're not gonna waste too much of your time, Cordell. How you feeling, man? What's going on? Let's start with the Ravens, man. OTAs are going on. I know we're kind of getting into that time where we get to the dog days, like we mentioned. What are your thoughts on the draft? I know we haven't talked to you since the draft. Kind of the schedule and what you think about this team. We know they're starting Kansas City, a lot of turnover. But what are your thoughts as you really see the team every day?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the Ravens are, still one of the teams when you talk about contenders in the NFL. I still believe that the Ravens should be mentioned in that category. And that's with me acknowledging, the offseason that they had where they lost more than they gained. You lose, in my opinion, the best defensive coordinator in football, and Mike McDonald. That changes things. I mean, this was a Ravens defense that I thought was the best defense in the league. They were a triple crown defense this past year. And to lose Mike McDonald, I thought that was something major. And then you combine that with some of the player personnel losses. You lose Patrick Queen. You lose Jadeveon Clowney, who was second on the team in sacks. You lose Ronald Darby, who stepped up big time when Marlon Humphrey went down. You lose 3 of your starting offensive linemen. You know what I'm saying? Like it's major changes. But all that to say, I still think this is a team that, as when you look at the top part of this roster, when you look at the best players on this team, we're talking about not just the best players on this team, but the best players in the league. Lamar Jackson now a 2-time MVP, Kyle Hamilton coming off an all-pro year, Roquan Smith, another guy coming off of an all-pro year, one of the best linebackers in football, Justin Madubuike in the middle of that defensive line who's coming off an all-pro year. So Mark Andrews, all those guys that they have, Zay Flowers on the offensive side. And they signed Derrick Henry. So, I think while the Ravens do have question marks about their team this year, I still think overall, as long as Lamar Jackson is healthy, they always have a shot.
How do you feel like there's still areas we need to address, because you said we've lost more than we've gained, such as like another wide receiver with Odell Beckham being gone, or Jadeveon Clowney, for example, being gone as like a pass rusher?
Yeah, I mean, the pass rush is a little concerning to me. I'm not gonna lie. You lose Clowney, like I mentioned, second on the team in sacks. You did get Kyle Van Noy back. That was good. Clowney is the one that hurts, though, if I'm being honest. Like, if I had to pick between those two guys, it would have been Clowney that would have been back. But I'm not surprised to see him, go to Carolina. He's a guy that he went through some family issues this past season, and he's from that area, so he wants to be, closer to them. So I fully understand that. But you look at the rate what the Ravens have now in terms of pass rush. Yeah, Justin Madubuike was incredible last year. Double-digit sack guy as an interior pass rusher. You just don't see that very often. But the thing is that it's something that can be duplicated. Like, I'm not looking at Justin Madubuike to now all of a sudden be a 13 sack guy a year. I don't think that's realistic. So it's like, what's his floor now? Is 8 sacks, is 8.5, 9 sacks? Is that what we're okay with? Are you okay with 7 sacks? And he's just a guy that, is able to still be that dual threat in terms of stopping the run and still being a pass rusher, but he's paid big time now. So I'm curious to see what the next step is for him. But David Ajabo and Adafe Owe, they worry me. David Ajabo right now, I gotta wait and see with him. I mean, I gotta at least see that the dude can stay on the field before I start talking about whether or not I can trust that he can play, football. Like I think he has some game, but even last year, it was kind of a disappointing training camp and preseason for David Ajabo. So I'm curious to see what he looks like when he's finally able to do some of the things. Right now he's not. He's kind of just out there for the most part watching. But in Adafe Owe, same thing with him. He's had injury issues. He's had consistency issues. So it's like I think that there's a possibilities there, and they use, they blitz. Kyle Hamilton comes. They love the nickel blitz as well. Arthur Millette was great at that last year. Their linebackers, Patrick Queen was really good as a blitzer. I think Trenton Simpson, they'll use him similarly in that way, let him play downhill. So it'll be more than just the edge guys. The Ravens led the league in sacks last year, or were one of the top leaders in sacks last year and the year before. So their system allows them to get pressure despite them maybe not having the big name talent on the outside.
And how do you feel about wide receiver being that Odell is gone?
I long felt like the Ravens wide receiver room could use more. I like Zay. Zay's great. They hit a home run with Zay, clearly. Hopefully he can keep it up, and not only keep it up, but now let's see what the next step is for him in his second year. But Zay could be special on the field, no doubt about it. Rashad Bateman, they seem to be optimistic about Bateman. And I think there are reasons to be optimistic about Bateman. But my issue is I feel like all we ever talk about is, the potential with Rashad Bateman. It's not ever like, we can go to game film and say, yeah, he's open. And sure, he was getting open, but there's something to be said about the fact that his quarterback doesn't trust him, to throw him the ball. He doesn't trust him. He trusted Zay Flowers. He trusted Isaiah Likely. He trusts Mark Andrews. He trusted Nelson Aguilar, who plays less than Rashad Bateman does. So it's something about that connection that just hasn't reached its potential. And hopefully that's something that's a big key for them this year, because if they are able to really get something out of Bateman, we could be having a totally different conversation about this Ravens wide receiver core. And honestly, because of how the Ravens are built, we do have to look at it more in terms of pass catchers as opposed to wide receivers, because the way they utilize their tight ends, what they were able to do with Likely last year when Mark Andrews went down, and even when Mark is healthy, what Mark looks like when he's out there, they have guys, in the tight end room that can put up the type of production that you could get from a receiver.
What are your thoughts on Derrick Henry being added to the roster? I'm pretty sure you've seen him up close and personal.
Mm-hmm.
One, how do you think he's going to do this upcoming season? And do you think he's going to make a difference? Although we're already the number one rushing offense in all of football. What are your thoughts?
I mean, and that's the thing. I think that Henry thing, like, I think there are people that are looking at this move, and the only way it'll be justified for them is if, the Ravens end up having somehow a better rushing attack than they had before, when they didn't have the names of Derrick Henry, when they're out there with Gus Edwards and, Dobbins whenever he's healthy, or Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell and those guys that were there last year. And honestly, the way that I feel like I'm looking at this is, number one, I feel like this move is a move that's set in place to save John Harbaugh from John Harbaugh. It's kind of to keep them from abandoning the run the way that they have and deep in the postseason, which has gotten them in trouble. And the thing is, it's like, yeah, I can't condone giving any, running backs in general. I think they had combined with 6 carries in the championship game last year, 3 each. Like, you can't condone that, but you definitely can't condone it if it's Derrick Henry. Like, Derrick Henry is the type of presence to where, unlike Gus Edwards and them, Derrick Henry can go up to these dudes and say, man, what's up? Like, I need the ball. You got to give me the rock. You got to get me in the game. Gus Edwards and those dudes, not to say that, it's not in their demeanor. It doesn't seem like it from what I know of, like a Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. They seem to kind of just be guys that's like, they going by whatever's called. And that's the case for most guys. But in that situation, you need somebody of that stature that's able to go there and be like, man, you got to get me the rock. So that's number one. Number two, I would also say, I'm not necessarily looking at this that they have to outdo what they've done before. Like, I'm not looking for Derrick Henry to go out there. And honestly, if Derrick Henry finished the season with like 800 yards rushing, something like that, maybe like 9 touchdowns, like, I really wouldn't trip off that. For me, it's all about January. What does it look like in January? They've already led the league in rushing. They've done it all. They've done that. They've shown that they can do it in the regular season, but they haven't shown that rushing attack can be as potent in the postseason. That's what I want to see. I want to see can they use Derrick Henry to wear teams down and beat teams the way that they do in the regular season, and now do it in January. And I would also say Derrick Henry is also there while the rushing attack has been great, the rushing attack has been great because of Lamar. Lamar has led this team in rushing every year as a starter. He's the reason that teams fear the Ravens running back, because I can promise you, if you put Joe Burrow back there, Gus Edwards isn't having the success he's had. Justice Hill's not having the success he's had. I don't know if Keaton Mitchell's having the success that he had. He's an undrafted free agent, but Lamar Jackson changes things when you talk about the rushing game and how defenses have to defend you. So again, as long as he's there, everything will kind of fall into place. But I think Derrick Henry is kind of there to also help take because if Lamar's not having a great rushing game, the Ravens aren't going. You're going to look up and the Ravens probably have like 40 something yards rushing if it's not mostly coming from Lamar. If he doesn't have a great day on the ground, they're not putting up big rushing numbers. So Henry is there to balance that out. And, we'll see how good it works in January, because that's really what matters to me.
You mentioned January, and now fast forward to the season opener. The Ravens take on the Kansas City Chiefs, an AFC Championship rematch. How do you feel the Ravens will do in the season opener, or does it even really matter because you're saying that the eyes need to be focused on January as opposed to just the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think this game means much. Now, I think for fans it will. Obviously, it's fresh. It's the team you lost to an AFC championship game, and it's the first team you're seeing to start the year. I mean, it's going to be them getting their rings that night in Kansas City. The Ravens players, they can say what they want. It'll matter to them as well. But ultimately, I think it's a great thing that they're playing the Chiefs week 1, because this game won't hold any weight. It's week 1. The Ravens could lose this game and they could go on and still do great things the rest of the season. Like, it's week 1. There are no expectations for week 1. Of course, you want to see your team start 1-0. Without a doubt, everybody wants to do that. But nobody's themselves week 1. The Chiefs lost to the Lions last year to start the season. So it doesn't make anything. I think it makes it as a more of a less pressure game for the Ravens, as opposed to them getting the Chiefs in week 12. And now it's built up. Now you're expecting both teams to kind of be peaking at that point of the year. Right now, week 1, it's kind of just like, you're just starting the year. You're just getting out there, and it's a big game, sure, because it's the game that you have that week. But ultimately, I think that this is a great situation for the Ravens because there's no pressure. And honestly, the Ravens are usually really good in September. I want to say, and I may be wrong, but I want to say Lamar has won Player of the Month, the AFC Player of the Month, the last 2 years in September. So they usually come out very hot to start the year. The Chiefs sometimes come out sluggish. They did this past year. So I don't put a lot of stock into this game, but I definitely understand why there will be people that will.
You don't put a lot of stock, even though they're 4-1 against the Chiefs?
No, because again, for that 4-1, what does that mean when it's all on the line? If you're not going to beat them, when the past record doesn't really mean much to me. A regular season, the Ravens, I've seen the Ravens beat the Chiefs in the regular season before. It's about what really matters. A team like the Ravens they've shown they're going to get to the postseason with their eyes closed. Like, the regular season stuff, it just doesn't appeal to me anymore. This team has, and I could promise you out at the Castle, it's all they care about is January 2. They care about winning games during the regular season for sure, but they know they are judged by what they do in the postseason. That's all that matters right now, honestly.
And with that said, with the offensive line, we have 3 new pieces, possibly that's going to be replacing, John Simpson and some of the other guys. What do you think about Roger Rosengarten, Ben Cleveland, and Andrew Voorhees taking over those 3 spots?
Yeah, I mean, it's that right now they're shuffling the offensive line. They're trying different things. So, they'll have, let's say they have those guys out there with the first unit, and then maybe a few minutes later they'll swap out a couple of guys and they'll just start mixing and matching. They're still trying to figure out what group gels the best, with each other. But those guys specifically, I'm still getting a look at Roger. We've gotten to see him a couple of times, rookie mini camp, and a couple of these OTA practices. I mean, he looks solid. He looks the part. But they're not in pads right now, and that's one of the areas that's definitely hard to kind of judge this time of year, because it's more so they're just showing that they know their assignment as opposed to actually doing what they have to do at that position. But I think they have high hopes for Roger. They definitely like him. I know that much. They went into the draft with high views of Roger of Rosengarten. So I think that's somebody that they're hoping that can kind of be a plug and play guy for them this year. We'll see. Ben Cleveland is kind of now or never for Ben Cleveland, but the good thing is the Ravens have the last 2 years have kind of found that guard that's in a similar situation. Remember, Ben Powers was like that. Ben Powers was kind of the guy that hadn't shown anything, and then he gets in that last year and he goes and makes himself a lot of money to go now play out in Denver. John Simpson, a guy last year. John Simpson wasn't great. I'm not going to sit here and make it seem like John Simpson was great last year, but he was serviceable. He hit the post every week. He started every game, and he was somebody that made them feel like they could rely on him. And now he goes, and now the Jets, in my opinion, have overpaid for him, but he goes and makes himself somebody out in New York. So they're hoping that they can kind of keep that going with Ben Cleveland, and for his sake, hopefully he can, because if he can't, they'll probably keep him around, because right now they need as much depth as they can get on that offensive line. So I don't think I would kind of be surprised if Ben Cleveland is a guy that's cut as we go into the season and they start finalizing the roster. But we'll see. I forget who the other guy was you asked me about.
Andrew Voorhees.
Andrew Voorhees, yeah, and that's another one. I mean, he was out all last year with his injury that he had going into the draft. We've seen now he looks good. I will acknowledge that with Voorhees in terms of just where he is physically right now and how he's worked his way back. He does actually look really good. He was out there with them in rookie mini camp, and he's been out there every OTA practice that I've been at, and he's running well. He's a big guy. He's definitely got the size and he can move. So if he can show that, he can stay healthy and stuff like that, I think he's a guy that may turn out to be, maybe at least out of the 3 that we just talked about, he could potentially be the guy that maybe gives them more bang for their buck.
Byron, Trey.
I think it's time to switch gears.
Yeah, I was waiting for Cavante to hop in there.
I've been patient, Cordell. I've been patient. Let my Raven brethren get their lavish questions in and all that. I was like, okay. Pause. All right, I'm in here. All right, so we'll go down 95 South. So the organization is a complete. We're flipping as we speak. The Josh Harris ownership and Adam Peters leadership is slowly flipping the roster. We had about nine picks. I think at least probably about 8 of them is probably going to make the roster just because we need to fill spots. But I think Adam Peters did a great job at getting a lot of value picks. So I want to dive into our draft selections. Obviously, the nice shiny one is Jaden Daniels, right? So that's him. He's the number one guy in our draft. That's cool. But I want to talk about some of the guys that not everybody knows much about. So I point out two guys specifically. Brandon Coleman, we got him in the 3rd round. I've been hearing a lot. Is he going to play guard? Is he going to play tackle? Is he going to be ready to play left tackle? Because it's a whole different animal and a whole different mindset on the professional level. And I think he's serviceable at both. But where do you see him best fitting for the Commanders?
Well, I think that they're right now just they're another team that's trying to piece this O-line together. You know, they're looking for athletes and anybody that feels like they can stick and, you know, stay in front of a guy. I think most likely he probably gets a look at tackle because they're going to give all those guys a look at the tackle positions. I think whoever they deem necessary, they're going to give them a look at tackle because you got a new toy back there. You know what I'm saying? You have to be able to solidify that position. But guard, they signed a guard out of the in free agency this year. I just think right now, and I don't know, I haven't been able to see him. I know he's a big dude. I know he's like 6'4", 300 plus pounds. So he can move, and playing at TCU, you had to do a lot out there. So I trust that the kid's athletic. What he ends up looking like out there, hopefully, is somebody that, you know, they can put out there and kind of plug and play.
So another guy that we drafted, probably outside of Jaden Daniels, probably my favorite pick, Mike Sanderstill, DB. You know, just came off a championship with John Harbaugh in Michigan. He's a dog. He's an absolute dog. One of the team captains, and that seems to be one of the trends that Adam Peters and Dan Quinn was looking at when picking players, looking at guys who were captains or were in leadership roles. And Mike Sanderstill is definitely a captain on that championship team. I think he's going to start in that nickel as the third corner. What does he bring? What can he bring to this Commanders secondary?
Well, hopefully he brings turnovers because they need them desperately. I mean, they need somebody that can make some game-changing plays because that was the whole thing with Forbes last year.
Yep.
And, you know, we saw that just wasn't the case. And I'm not out on Forbes the way some people are. I'm trying to be patient with the kid. I'm I'm praying that he's got something in the tank this year because we still kind of need that to hit. But
yeah.
I like this pick. I think in terms of them, like you mentioned, going after the team captains, it's clear that they're trying to get, you know, guys in this locker room that are hard workers and have some sort of standard for themselves. If you listen to a couple of these dudes that have been around talk about this team in the past couple of years, they felt like it was too many dudes in that locker room that simply just didn't care enough, that didn't want to work hard, that didn't care about the outcomes, that were just happy to be in the league. So I think that they are clearly looking for guys that are driven, that can kind of not only self-motivate, but motivate others as well. But I like I said, if he can bring turnovers, that right there is a huge boost because they need anybody on the as much as I love Cam Curl, I think that was one of the big reasons why Cam is gone, because Cam didn't make any game-changing plays. It just is what it is. So if he can show he can do that, then I think that dude would be definitely worth it.
Now, I do not like the idea of Emmanuel Forbes punt returning, kick returning. It's just rumors right now, and I'm sure, like you said, we trying everything right now just to see what guys can do. But I'm not, and he has put on a little bit of weight. I hear he's about 180-ish, right now. But that's not the guy. I'm not sure if I want him necessarily returning kicks. How much should we look into this rumor, and should it just be a grain of salt?
Right now, I think a lot of things should be a grain of salt. It's OTAs. You're going to see some crazy stuff out there in practices. They're trying stuff right now. They're giving everybody a look at a bunch of different positions. So, the Ravens have done this. I've seen the Ravens, do things with certain players, play them in certain positions. And then you get to like mini camp and it starts to slim down. Some of that stuff went away. Some of that stuff they're still experimenting with. Same thing entering training camp. So this is just the time of year that they're just, it's very loose. The practices are very loose this time of year. They're not in pads, like I said. So sometimes it's guys having fun. Sometimes it is them, just the coaches wanting to get a look at stuff. But something like that, I wouldn't really put a lot of stock into that right now. If he's still doing that into training camp, all right, then it's probably something we need to pay attention to.
All right. Well, surprise pick for the Commanders. A pick that you said, I didn't think about that one, or that's a great pick.
Well, it's not one that I didn't think about, but I'm surprised it happened with them to get Luke McCaffrey. Like, I'm a Nebraska fan, so I got to watch Luke play in Nebraska, and I watched this dude play like at least 3 positions. They didn't know what position to put him at. This dude was at times the quarterback, he was the receiver, he was the running back. That dude is a football player. I am beyond excited about Luke McCaffrey, and it seems like so are they, because they pushed this dude as much as any of these other dudes. I mean, you might have thought that he was a first round pick the way that they post this guy all over their social media and stuff. And as crazy as it may seem, when you start seeing teams push guys like that, that matters. They're kind of telling you what they think of these guys, or what they believe the people outside think of the guy, one of the two. And maybe in this case, it's a little bit of both, because I think everybody, when they hear the McCaffrey name, they get excited. But I've gotten to watch a lot of Luke McCaffrey football, because even once he ended up going to Rice, I kept my eye on him. This dude can play. He can play. And so Adam Peters, coming from this Kyle Shanahan offense and out in San Francisco, and has seen the creativities and stuff, and you have a guy like Cliff Kingsbury, who is a very creative offensive mind in his own right, they're going to find ways to get this dude the ball. He's the type of guy that if he gets the ball in his hands, he can definitely make some things happen. And that's what I really liked about the draft in terms of the offensive side, the position players that they got. I felt like they got quite a few guys that are versatile in terms of positions, but are also like can make game-changing plays. That they just need people that they haven't had real skill at the skill positions
in a while.
They finally look like they committed to trying to get some guys in that can really change the game. And hopefully you ask me about Jaden, because I want to talk about Jaden. I do.
Go ahead, talk about him.
Let's do it. I have one question after Jaden, but yeah. Let's get into our first pick.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've never been more proud to say I'm a fan of this team than when they drafted Jaden Daniels. It's the first thing that I can honestly say in a while, maybe since, extending Terry, but it's been very few things throughout this team's history over the course of the last 30 years plus that I could say home run. That was brilliant. That was exactly what they were supposed to do. That's what they did with Jaden. They made me proud that night that they didn't screw it up. And I like that everything I've heard from them afterwards, which is usually the case with these teams. They always say, "Oh yeah, that was always the plan." But they, to their credit, I think that you listen to a lot of the things that Adam Peters said throughout the offseason. I felt like he was letting people know what type of quarterback he wanted, and it fit Jaden every time he spoke about it. Everything he was saying. I've got tweets from Jaden's freshman year of me begging the Commanders to get this dude. I mean, I've been in love with this dude as a quarterback from day one. So I am beyond excited for Jaden Daniels and what I think the type of player he's going to be. I've just watched him grow. And you see the discourse on Twitter as it is every draft season. I'm seeing all these Drake May versus Jaden Daniels debates and people calling him a one-hit wonder and all. I'm like, it's so many people out there that just have no idea what they're talking about. It's mind-blowing. But Jaden is somebody that I'm putting my name on the line for. I think that dude is he's a slam dunk for sure.
Last one. We talk about positions not being great. Well, let me say cores that have not been great for us. our linebacking core hasn't been much. Has been much to talk about since London Fletcher, Marcus Washington, LeVar Arrington. Guys just don't come around like that anymore. But it has done a 180 with the veteran leadership from Bobby Wagner. We got Louvu coming in. I don't know what's gonna happen with Jamin Davis. We got McGee, the brother out of Temple, in the draft. I'm really excited about this linebacking core. Will we see a difference this year?
I hope so. I hope so. It can't get worse. You know what I'm saying? At least Cody Barton ain't out there in coverage no more, man. I mean, at least those days over. David Mayo, God bless him. He tries hard. You know what I'm saying? But I can't watch that no more. And I'm not expecting all-pro Bobby Wagner. You know what I'm saying? I'm not expecting Super Bowl Bobby Wagner. But again, it's just another adult in the room. You know what I'm saying? And he's going to be one of the captains of this defense. And now you combine in terms of like leadership, you combine a guy like a Bobby Wagner with, Jonathan Allen and how he's been, trying to be that leader. But I feel like it's just tough to be a leader in that type of environment with that culture over the years. It's tough. So hopefully now with the new ownership and the new front office and everything, these guys are rejuvenated. They're hungry again. They feel like they're a pro again. I don't think that team carried themselves as such. So I think that but to your point, to the question, the linebackers, I love Louvu. I think they just got more athletic and they got true linebackers. And while none of these dudes are going to be premier guys, I just think as a unit combined with what they did in the defensive front, I think it'll be okay. In terms of Jamin Davis, I've heard the rumors that they're trying him out outside and seeing what they can. It's time to try something. It's time to try something.
It is. Yes, it is.
And I've been for a while saying that they need to maybe try putting them on the outside, letting them be a pass rusher, doing something. The dude's one of the fastest linebackers in the league. He can run. So I want to see them just allow him to kind of play downhill more, just simplify it for him. Whatever it takes to get the most out of him, you got to do it, because at this point, they haven't gotten much of anything from Jamin Davis.
Let me squeeze in a question about Washington, well, all the Washington teams. How ecstatic are you that the Washington teams are here to stay instead of moving to Virginia?
Yeah, I think it's cool. I don't want any of these teams to go to Virginia. Now, look, I'm not a Wizards fan, but at the same time, I like the Caps, and I don't want Virginia. It's just one thing. It's going to be one thing after another, and it's always been these rumors of some of these DC teams going to Virginia. The Commanders have been dealing with that same thing. So I'm glad that the teams are staying in the district. Is where they're supposed to be, in my opinion. I just think the teams in the district just need to get better. All of them. I mean, the Caps had their time. The Caps got some older veterans. I get it. The Wizards, I mean, they're just an unserious franchise. They're just unserious. They're the most unserious team, I would say, maybe in sports. Honestly, I just don't think the Wizards matter in the grand scheme of things when you talk to sports fans. No Wizards conversation comes up. I just don't think it does. And that's because they're irrelevant. They're just always irrelevant. So we'll see if that changes for them. Of course, they end up getting the second pick, and one is going to be one of the worst classes.
It might be you, Cordell. You might be the second pick man of this draft.
At this point, I might give them more bang for their buck. You know what I'm saying? And the Nationals, again, another rebuilding team, but I like the direction they're going. We'll see with the Commanders. But in general, the DC team's got to be better. As a whole, the Mystics, oh my God, I don't even want to upset people. I don't know what's up with them. Angel sitting right there, just right there. And
they didn't
I
do
don't
it.
know what's up with them. I don't know.
Angel's coming there Thursday, and then Caitlin Clark to follow. So that's back to back.
And they're playing what's funny about that is that they're moving to the Capital One Arena for those games. But the thing is, what would have happened if you drafted Angel? Would you not, in theory, be playing almost every game in that arena? I just don't know what they were doing, even just from a marketing standpoint. It just made too much sense. And bad organizations make bad decisions. That's just what it is. I've learned over time that, while these people that get these front office jobs, I don't want to disrespect all of these guys or any of them for that matter. Like, it's a tough gig. It's tough to get in that spot. But I don't make the mistake of thinking that everybody that's in these spots knows what they're doing. It's people that's in jobs that, that they have no business in all over the world. It's no different in sports. It's no different in managing these teams. We see it. We see how some of these teams have been driven into the ground. So it's, like I said, bad teams bad organizations make bad decisions. And I think that's kind of been the thing that's plaguing these DC teams the most.
All right, Cordell,
then
we
let
know
me
you got to
follow
go.
up
Go
with,
ahead, Trey. Go ahead. Finish up.
I want to squeeze in a 2-part question for you. Let me ask you, how do you feel about the NCAA football, the NCAA settlement that happened and Reggie Bush getting his Heisman Trophy back?
When you talk about the settlement, you talking about the game being able to come back?
Paying college athletes finally.
Yeah. I mean, I've always longed for college athletes to get paid. I have no issue with that whatsoever. I mean, it is the wild, wild west right now, but it's, and maybe towards the athletes, they felt like for years that they weren't getting what they deserved. So now, yeah, it is out of control. NIL stuff is out of control right now. The college game I don't like the state of the college game. I will say that. It's just the traditions and everything, the love that I thought that the natural love that came with just watching college football and stuff like that and basketball is not as strong for me as it used to be. But I love the fact that these athletes are getting paid and being able to make money off their likeness and their image and stuff like that. Because I mean, how many times have we seen during March Madness, they're putting these commercials and stuff together with these players and highlighting the best players in the nation all over these commercials, and these players not seeing a dime from that. Like, so I don't have a problem with it at all. And I'm with Reggie Bush getting the Heisman Trophy. I mean, it's the right thing to do. It's like, what are we doing? Like, Reggie Bush is one of the greatest college football players to ever play. I mean, let alone my lifetime, but in general, Reggie Bush was amazing at USC. So, I mean, when you think about Heisman winners, he's one of the main ones that are going to come to your mind. So they had to do right by Reggie, and I'm glad they did.
Cordell, we know you got to go. I just want to hit you with 2 quick ones.
Yeah,
Who
man.
wins the NBA Finals, and will your boy Jimmy Butler be pushed out of Miami? Because I heard him and Pat Riley, a little tension. It seems like.
So I'm gonna go to the Jimmy thing first. At first, I was concerned about that and their relationship and what's happening. But after a while, I kind of but I had to kind of remind myself that that's how they operate. When Pat came out in that press conference and he's like, Jimmy need to, basically shut his mouth. Don't be talking about, you're not out there. Why are you talking about? I fully believe that Pat Riley told Jimmy that to his face too, or over the phone. Like, I just think that's the relationship they have. You talk about their locker room and stuff like that. The players on the court, they hold each other accountable. They, for better or worse, because we've seen it get bad when Spo and Jimmy was getting into it on the sideline that game. We've seen it overflow, but that's just the relationship they have. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't still go south. It doesn't mean that Jimmy may not steal one out. But I believe that Jimmy will still be there. And I think Miami really suffered by not getting Dame last offseason. And that turned out to really be the move that didn't happen that ended up costing them their season. Even if Jimmy was out there, I wasn't very confident in Miami this year. I just didn't feel it with them. They just, this whole thing of them turning it on as soon as the playoffs start. Yeah, that was cool. But I just didn't see it with them this year. So I think Jimmy stays. I definitely don't think he's going back to Philly. Ain't nothing out there. Like, all this stuff about him going to Philly, I don't buy that at all. Once you pick Tobias Harris over me, it's like, bro, I'm done. That's a bridge has been burned at that point. But in terms of the finals, I mean, right now it's a close one out in Dallas. So I think this series is over, basically. Even if Minnesota wins tonight, it's over. I just think I've had to be honest. I've said some critical things about Luka. I've said, and while I've always maintained I think he's a heck of a talent and an incredible player, I've never felt like his style of play could be successful this time of year. I don't know. He just doesn't seem like the guy that gets the best out of his teammates. But I think him and Kyrie are in a rhythm right now. They at least have figured out how to play with each other. And they're just hot right now. And I will say, when Luka gets hot, I mean, in the league right now, there ain't another player that I'm probably more scared of when they catch fire than Luka Doncic. Maybe Steph still at this stage, because I feel like he could still go off, but Luka goes into a different stratosphere. And Kyrie is also being very aggressive offensively in this series. So if they're going to play like this, I think they beat Boston. I just don't think very highly of Boston. I don't know. I mean, the East is to the East, and Boston, despite it all, Indiana did not want to win games in this series, despite being the better team for 40, 46 minutes. Like, they don't want to win these games. So I don't have a lot of faith in Boston. I think they're a solid team. Them and Dallas will be a good matchup. But I think Dallas probably wins that series in 6 right now, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I've been saying that whoever comes out of the West, I feel like was going to win, whether it was the Timberwolves or the Mavs. Boston just seems like they've just breezed through everybody, both in the regular season and in the playoffs, and they just don't seem battle tested. And it's also still that dynamic of, is it Brown's team, is it Tatum's team? And Tatum should be the guy, but he doesn't seem like he wants to take that mantle of being both the face of the league and the face of the Celtics. So while they still have that uniffiness about them, I don't think that Boston will win until they figure that leadership role out.
I agree. I've been saying for a while, they can't figure out who their best player is. And I think, Jaylen Brown looked like their best player in this series. But Tatum on any given night could be the best. I still think, for my money, I'd still say Tatum, I think, is the best player on that team, but he doesn't always play like it. You know what I'm saying? And they have the luxury of having two guys like that. And then when Porzingis coming back will change things. They're a different thing. They're a totally different team when Porzingis is out there. I will acknowledge that. So that's something you got to worry about in the finals. What does he look like, and how sustainable is he? Because he's had major injury concerns throughout his career as well. So even if he comes back, how confident are you that he'll be able to play at the level you need to play at in the finals and still come out healthy?
one super quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Drake or Kendrick?
Yeah. It's crazy. I'm a fan of both of them, honestly. Like, I've been listening to Drake before he was even on the Young Money stuff. Like, he was repping ATF and doing mixtapes with like Trey Songz and all of them back then. Like, I was listening to him back then. But I'm also like, Kendrick is my guy as well. Cole is my guy too. And I'm glad Cole got out when he did, to be honest with you. But Kendrick won that. I mean, Kendrick was just, I knew lyrically Drake wouldn't be able to mess with Kendrick. Is just different. He different with it. He's just too creative. And I think Drake has bars. Drake could definitely spit, but Kendrick is, he's mentally, like, I don't think Drake was ready for the mental game that Kendrick was ready to play. And I think Kendrick blitzed him, with all the records that he was dropping. And that's the knock on Kendrick, is that he don't drop no music. He dropped like once every 2 years or something. And so when he just starts putting out 5 songs in like 2 days, Drake like, all right, what, like, I got nothing now. You got me.
Cordell, how can the people keep up with you and what you got going on with Shaking It Up Sports, Winning Drive, and all your other endeavors as well?
Yeah, you can follow me at Cordell Woodland on social media. Still got Shaking It Up Sports on 105.7 The Fan on weeknights. I still do the Orioles and Ravens, so this is kind of the busy time for me. So right now I'm kind of in more reporter mode as opposed to like on air the last couple of weeks. But I'll be definitely back on probably next week or so. We'll see. The Winning Drive podcast, we actually don't do that one anymore. Me and Rita, unfortunately, we announced that recently, not too long ago. So it's still fresh, but definitely have fun doing it with Odyssey and everything. Me and Rita, we still on the same page. That ain't never gonna change. But the podcast itself, we don't do that. podcast anymore, but you could definitely find me on 105.7 The Fan talking a lot of Orioles and Ravens.
Yes, sir.
Definitely
Cordell,
got to
we
have you back to
appreciate
talk about the Orioles, man. Definitely.
Yeah, they
For
need to make a
sure,
move,
for sure.
Cordell. I'm gonna leave it there. They need to make a move though, and that
Yeah,
bullpen.
they might need to make a couple. They might need to make a couple of moves for sure.
Yeah, it was tough tonight. I saw you tweeting,
Yeah,
Cordell, but we
yeah.
appreciate you, brother. We're gonna have you back and send love to the family, man, and keep up the great work. We always appreciate you
Yes,
having
man.
me and giving us some
Congratulations.
time
Appreciate
here on
y'all,
the
man.
Flex Zone
For
podcast.
sure.
Give it up for Cordell,
God.
everybody. One more
Thank you,
time.
Cordell.
Check him out.
Appreciate you, man.
Appreciate
Cordell
y'all.
Woodland, picking it
Go
up.
Commanders.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Big
Finally.
up to Cordell.